At my daughter's 6th birthday party, my dad video called us from his military base and asked, "What did she pick out with the $500 I sent?" I froze, holding the phone up so he could see Julie playing with her friends. "What $500, Dad?" Behind me, my husband's eyes bulged and his coffee mug nearly slipped from his hand. My father's face turned concerned immediately. "The birthday money, sweetheart. I send it every month like always." I laughed, nervous and confused. "Dad, I think you're mixed up. You haven't sent anything. I would have thanked you." Dad's face darkened on the screen. "Mixed up? Kayla, I've been sending $500 every single month for 2 years. For the kids, for birthdays, for clothes, and everything you need." He disappeared from the frame, returning with a thick folder. 24 transfers. "Here, October, November, December." He held up printout after printout to the camera. $500 each month. Routing number ending in 4782. My heart stopped. That was Michael's separate account, the one for his work expenses. "For my grandkids," Dad continued, his voice breaking. "So you wouldn't struggle while I'm stationed here. So they could have birthday parties, Christmas presents. So you could buy groceries without stress." Each word hit me like a physical blow. I thought about Julie's dollar store birthday decorations, the apologetic smile when I said we'd do something special next year, the nights I skipped dinner so the kids could have enough, the ramen adventures we had twice a week, the field trips they missed. "I'm sleeping in a barracks in Kuwait," Dad said quietly, "sending half my contractor pay so you don't struggle." I turned to Michael. He stood there, face white, hands shaking. The coffee pooled around his feet like a confession. 24 months, I whispered, my mind calculating despite the shock. $500 each month. The room started spinning. $12,000. While I sold my grandmother's ring to pay for Julie's school supplies. While I drove for DoorDash after bedtime to cover groceries. While I told the kids that homemade birthdays are more special. While Michael came home late from overtime with dilated pupils and new excuses. "You've been stealing my father's money while our kids went without." The silence was deafening except for Julie's laughter from the backyard. "I was going to tell you," Michael started. "Tell me what?" I shouted. "That you've been collecting $500 a month while I worked 3 jobs? While I told Julie we couldn't afford a birthday cake from the store? Then where is it?" I grabbed his phone. "Show me where $12,000 went." His hands trembled as he unlocked it. I saw the account. Deposits from Kuwait, then withdrawals. ATM at casino, $200. ATM at casino, $300. "I have a problem," he whispered. "You had $500 coming in every month from my father while I skipped meals," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "You held me while I sobbed about failing our kids. You said we needed to budget better while you were stealing." Dad's voice came through cold and steady. "Michael, did my granddaughter eat ramen for dinner on her birthday while you had my money in your pocket?" Michael couldn't look at the screen. "I'm 7,000 miles away in a desert." Dad's voice broke. "You let my daughter think I'd forgotten them." I grabbed Michael's phone again, scrolling through the transactions. "These casino withdrawals," I said, my voice shaking. "July 15th, that was Julie's first soccer game. August 3rd, her first dance recital. You weren't stuck in traffic. You weren't at work. You were gambling while I sat alone at our child's biggest moments, making excuses for why Daddy couldn't make it." He looked at the floor with embarrassment. Then the Christmas memory hit me like a sledgehammer. "Last year, I told the kids Santa was having a tough year. Julie cried. She thought she'd been bad." My voice cracked. "She came home after seeing all the other kids' presents and asked what she did wrong. She made a list of ways to be better so Santa would love her next time." The rage was consuming me. "You had $500 in December, another $500 in November, $1,000 while I wrapped dollar store toys in newspaper, while our perfect daughter spent a year trying to be better because you made her believe she wasn't good enough for Christmas." Julie ran inside, her handmade paper crown sliding. "Mommy, can we have cake now?" I looked at her sweet face, then at the homemade cake I decorated at 2 a.m. after my DoorDash shift. "Yes, baby, go get your friends." When she left, I turned back. $500 a month for 2 years, while your daughter wore shoes with holes, while your son couldn't play soccer, while I skipped lunch every day to save $5. Dad's voice cut through like a blade. "I'm on the next flight home. Emergency family leave. 24 months of wire fraud, Michael." Michael's face went gray. "Jim, please, pack the kids' things tonight," Dad said to me. "Gentler now. You're done struggling alone. I'll be there in 18 hours. I looked at Julie's birthday crown on the counter, made from paper plates and aluminum foil. She never knew her grandfather had sent money for a real one. "You didn't just steal money," I said quietly. "You stole their relationship with him. Julie thinks her grandpa doesn't care. You stole that from her." Dad was putting on his uniform jacket. Behind him, Mom was on another phone. I heard forensic accountant. 18 hours, Dad repeated. "And Michael, you better not be there when I arrive." He hung up the phone, and when I turned to Michael, he was looking at me with something that said he was willing to do anything but leave peacefully. My fingers gripped the counter edge so hard my knuckles went white as Michael took a step toward me, his jaw clenched and fists tight at his sides. The birthday guests were still laughing in the backyard while my husband stood there looking like he might actually hurt me for the first time in our marriage. I slipped my phone under the counter and typed a quick message to Dad without looking down, just 3 words that said everything. Julie burst through the back door asking for juice boxes, and I forced my face into a smile that felt like breaking glass. Michael stepped back into the corner while I grabbed the drinks from the fridge and handed them to her with shaking hands. She skipped back outside, completely unaware that her whole world was about to change forever. My thumb found my neighbor's number, and I sent her a text asking if she was home, just in case I needed to get the kids out fast. She replied within seconds that her door was open if we needed anything, and I felt slightly less alone. Michael watched me with those calculating eyes that told me he knew exactly what I was doing. Parents started arriving to pick up their kids, and I walked each one to the door with forced cheerfulness, while Michael stayed in the kitchen. The last mom finally collected her son, and I locked the door behind them with deliberate slowness, knowing what was coming next. Michael started talking immediately about how I didn't understand, and he was going to pay it back, but I held up my hand to stop him. I pulled out my phone and hit the record button, setting it on the counter between us where the red light blinked like a warning. He started pacing the kitchen, going back and forth between blaming his work stress and promising he'd get help tomorrow if I just gave him another chance. I let him talk while the phone recorded every excuse and justification that came out of his mouth. When he finally admitted to taking the money but insisted it was just borrowing, I felt my stomach turn but kept my face completely neutral. The kids came inside asking about dinner, and I told them we were having a special sleepover in Mom's room tonight, making it sound like an adventure. They got excited about the camping in my bedroom, and I helped them gather their stuffed animals and blankets while Michael watched from the doorway. Once they were settled with a movie on my laptop, I locked my bedroom door and heard Michael's footsteps in the hallway. He knocked once, hard enough to rattle the frame, but stopped when I reminded him the kids were listening and didn't need to hear this. I called the non-emergency police line from the bathroom with the water running to muffle my voice. The operator listened while I explained the situation and gave me a report number, saying an officer could do a drive-by if I felt unsafe. Her calm voice helped steady my nerves, even though my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I wrote down the case number. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad showing his flight details, and that he'd land at 2 p.m. tomorrow with a rental car already reserved. Mom messaged separately that she'd found a forensic accountant who specialized in financial abuse cases and could start documenting everything immediately. Knowing they were both mobilizing from different directions made me feel less trapped in this nightmare. I barely slept that night, getting up every hour to check the door locks and peek at the kids sleeping peacefully in my bed. Around 3 a.m., I heard Michael moving around in the garage, and I grabbed my phone to document the time and what I was hearing. The garage door opened and closed twice, then his truck started and sat idling for 20 minutes before he finally came back inside. I typed everything into my phone notes, creating a timeline of his movements that might matter later for evidence. By sunrise, I'd written out a detailed timeline of the last 2 years. Every late night, every missed event, every excuse about overtime. The kids woke up at their usual time, and I got them ready for school like nothing had changed, keeping their routine normal. Julie asked why we had a sleepover, and I told her it was just for fun, while I braided her hair with trembling fingers. I packed their lunches and checked their backpacks while Michael's snoring drifted from the living room couch. When I walked past to get the kids' shoes, I saw him sprawled there surrounded by empty beer bottles and cigarette butts. The timing of this video call seems oddly perfect, doesn't it? 2 whole years of monthly payments, and it just happens to come up during the birthday party when Michael's right there with his coffee. I took photos from 3 different angles, making sure to capture the mess around him while he claimed he wanted to fix things. The morning sun lit up the evidence of his priorities perfectly. This man who stole from his own children while drowning his guilt in alcohol. Julie asked if Daddy was sick, and I told her he was just tired while I helped her with her jacket. My son grabbed his backpack without asking any questions, but I saw him looking at his father with confused eyes. We walked out to wait for the school bus, and I held their hands tighter than usual, wondering how I'd protect them from all of this. The bus pulled up and I watched them climb the steps before driving straight to the bank. My hands shook as I filled out the paperwork for my own checking account. The banker helped me switch my work direct deposit and showed me how to transfer exactly half from our joint account. I took screenshots of the balance before touching anything and left Michael's half untouched. Back at home, his car was still in the driveway and I could hear him snoring upstairs. I grabbed our important papers from the filing cabinet in the hallway closet. Birth certificates went into a manila folder, along with social security cards and insurance documents. His desk drawer was unlocked and I found his separate account statements stuffed behind old tax returns. The casino withdrawals went back 3 years, not just 2. Page after page showed the same pattern with amounts getting bigger over time. I photographed every single statement with my phone, then locked everything in my car trunk. My phone started buzzing with fraud alerts while I was still in the driveway. Michael was at an ATM downtown draining our joint checking account. I called the bank immediately, but he'd already taken $400. The woman on the phone helped me freeze the account, but the damage was done. I took screenshots of every alert and added them to my growing folder of evidence. At the school pickup, I went straight to the main office and explained there was a family emergency. The secretary made notes in their computer system that only I could pick up the kids. Julie's teacher caught me in the hallway and mentioned Julie seemed worried today. She kept asking if everything was okay at home during story time. I told her we were dealing with some changes, but the kids were safe. Back in my car, I typed out an email to the principal explaining the custody situation. I asked her to document any attempts by Michael to take the kids from the school. Her response came within minutes saying they would follow protocol and only release them to me. Another safety net clicked into place while I waited for the kids to come out. Michael's texts started coming fast while I was making dinner. First he was sorry and begging me to talk. Then he got angry saying I was overreacting about some mistakes. Within an hour he was threatening to take the kids if I didn't stop being dramatic. I screenshot every single message, especially the ones where he used the word take. His messages went from apologizing to blaming me to making threats all in 60 minutes. I called legal aid and got an appointment with Lucille Donnelly for the next morning. She listened to my whole story and immediately started filling out paperwork for an emergency protective order. She said the process would take a few days, but I was doing everything right. She'd seen this pattern before with the stealing and the gambling and the threats. I spent the rest of the afternoon writing out every detail I could remember. Every birthday he missed claiming overtime while he was really at the casino. Every night I went to bed hungry so the kids could eat while he had money in his pocket. Every field trip they couldn't go on because we couldn't afford the fee. My hand cramped from writing, but getting it all down on paper felt like letting poison out of my body. Lucille read through it and said it was powerful evidence for the custody case. Michael discovered I'd frozen the joint account around dinner time and sent a text calling me financially abusive. 20 minutes later, I got an alert that he'd taken a $2,000 cash advance on our credit card. The transaction showed it happened at the casino ATM just like always. I called to freeze that card too, but the money was already gone. That brought his theft total to $14,000 between my dad's money and now this. Dad called during the kids' bath time from his layover in Germany. His voice was tired, but focused as he asked for updates on everything. When he mentioned Julie's birthday party, his voice cracked a little bit. I could hear Mom in the background making lists of things to bring and people to call. They were both in full protection mode, ready to help us rebuild everything Michael had destroyed. The next morning dragged like every minute was an hour, until finally at 2:15 p.m. The doorbell rang and there was Dad standing in his dusty contractor gear with his duffel bag on the porch. My knees went weak and I grabbed the doorframe while the kids screamed and ran past me into his arms. He dropped his bag and caught them both, lifting them up while looking over their heads at me with this fierce look that said nobody was going to hurt us again. Michael heard the commotion from the bedroom, and I saw him peek around the corner before slinking back when Dad's eyes found him. Dad set the kids down and told them to go play in the backyard for a bit. Then he walked straight to the kitchen table and started pulling papers from his bag. He spread out bank statements, wire transfer receipts, and printed emails across the table, while Michael finally came out and sat down across from us. Dad's voice stayed low and controlled, but there was something dangerous underneath as he went through each payment one by one, pointing at dates and amounts. October 15th, $500, while Julie wore shoes with holes. November 3rd, $500, while they ate ramen for dinner. December 1st, $500, while the kids thought Santa forgot them. Michael kept his eyes on the table and mumbled something about addiction being a disease, but Dad cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. After going through all 26 transactions, Dad told Michael to pack a bag and leave, but Michael crossed his arms and said this was his house too. That's when Dad pulled out his phone and called the police, explaining we needed a civil standby for a domestic situation. 2 officers showed up within 20 minutes and calmly explained to Michael that while they couldn't force him out permanently tonight, they strongly suggested he pack some things and find somewhere else to stay to let everyone cool down. Michael grabbed a garbage garbage bag and started throwing clothes in it while muttering about his rights and how this was illegal, but the officers just stood there watching until he walked out the door. After they left, I couldn't sit still and definitely couldn't sleep, so I grabbed all the bank statements and started making a timeline on poster board with 2 columns. On the left, I wrote every struggle we had, every missed opportunity, every time I had to tell the kids no. On the right, I wrote every casino withdrawal Michael made with Dad's money. Seeing Julie's missed field trip next to a $200 ATM withdrawal at the casino made me run to the bathroom and throw up. Dad stayed up with me, making pot after pot of coffee and just letting me work through it all without trying to fix anything. Around 3 in the morning, my phone rang, and it was the forensic accountant Mom had hired, calling from the East Coast where it was already 6 a.m. She'd been working through the night and found the pattern was even worse than we thought, with Michael's withdrawals happening within hours of Dad's deposits most times. She'd also found 2 more transactions we'd missed, bringing the total to 26 payments and $13,000 stolen. The theft actually started 2 months before Dad told us, meaning Michael had been lying and stealing even longer. The next morning, I drove to the police station with my poster board timeline and 3 folders of evidence to file a report for theft by deception. Detective Marshall Crow took my statement and looked through everything carefully, asking questions about dates and amounts. He assigned a case number and said he'd be in touch about next steps, but warned me these cases take time to build properly. 2 days later, Detective Crow called back to set realistic expectations, explaining that while criminal charges were possible, the prosecutor would have to decide if they could prove intent to deceive since Michael and I were married. He suggested I focus on protecting myself and the kids through family court first, and use the criminal case as leverage if needed. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but I appreciated him being honest, instead of giving me false hope. That same afternoon, I called the school and scheduled Julie for counseling with Genevieve Dupree, the counselor who specialized in helping kids through family trauma. She had an opening the next day and assured me she was trained in age-appropriate ways to help children process difficult situations. I didn't tell Julie why she was going, just that she'd be talking to a nice lady at the school who helps kids with their feelings. The next morning, I walked Julie to the counselor's office and waited outside while they met, my stomach in knots, wondering what my baby girl would say. After 45 minutes, Genevieve came out holding a picture Julie had drawn of herself with a big X over her body and the word bad written underneath. She explained that Julie had internalized blame for adult problems, thinking she was bad, and that's why Santa didn't bring presents, and why Daddy wasn't home anymore. The counselor gave me tools to help reassure Julie without overwhelming her with adult details, suggesting simple phrases like, Mommy and Daddy's problems are never your fault, and you are loved no matter what. Michael's timing with that ATM withdrawal right when fraud alerts hit seems too convenient. Was he watching the account the whole time? The way he cycled through sorry, angry, then threatening in just 1 hour makes me wonder if this is a practiced routine he's used before. That night while the kids slept, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael proposing that he'd go to rehab and family therapy if I dropped all legal proceedings and let him come home immediately. The manipulation was so obvious it made me sick, using recovery as a bargaining chip instead of taking responsibility for what he'd done. I forwarded the text to Lucille at Legal Aid, who replied within minutes saying this was typical behavior for someone trying to avoid consequences and that I should maintain no direct contact going forward. Dad sat at my kitchen table that evening with his laptop open, researching custody laws while I fed the kids mac and cheese. He kept shaking his head and muttering about how the system protected abusers more than victims. When the kids went to watch cartoons, he turned the screen toward me, showing case after case where gambling addicts still got visitation rights. His jaw clenched as he read about supervised visits and gradual reunification programs. I knew he wanted Michael completely gone, but the reality was courts rarely terminated parental rights without extreme circumstances. We spent 2 hours going through different scenarios and safety plans, marking emergency contacts in my phone and practicing what to do if Michael showed up. Dad downloaded recording apps on my phone and showed me how to document everything. The next morning, Lucille from Legal Aid called saying she'd filed for temporary sole custody and exclusive use of the house. She emailed me 20 pages of forms to review before our hearing next week. Each page asked for details about our finances, living situation, and Michael's behavior. The section about domestic incidents made me realize how many warning signs I'd ignored over the years. Lucille warned me that even with everything Michael had done, he'd probably get some form of visitation eventually. The thought of handing my kids over to him made my stomach turn, but she said judges almost always preserved some parental contact. She suggested starting a journal to document everything that happened from now on. 3 nights later, at exactly 10:15, pounding on the front door woke the whole house. Michael's voice carried through the wood, demanding to see his kids, slurring slightly. Dad jumped up from the couch where he'd been sleeping and stood by the door while I grabbed my phone to call 911. The operator stayed on the line while Michael kept pounding and yelling about his rights as a father. Julie came downstairs crying and I carried her back to her room, telling her everything was okay while my heart raced. The police arrived in 8 minutes, though it felt like hours. 2 officers talked to Michael outside while another took my statement inside. They told him about the protective order Lucille had gotten and warned him that coming back would mean immediate arrest. Michael argued with them for another 10 minutes before finally leaving. The officer gave me a case number and said to call immediately if he returned. Dad stayed up the rest of the night sitting in a chair facing the front door. The next morning, a locksmith arrived at 7 and changed every lock in the house. Dad supervised while I made breakfast, trying to keep things normal for the kids. After lunch, we installed a video doorbell and motion sensor lights around the property. Dad showed me how to check the camera feed on my phone and set up alerts for any movement near the doors. That afternoon, we sat the kids down for a safety talk, keeping it simple and not scary. Julie asked why Daddy couldn't use his key anymore, and I just said he was staying somewhere else for a while. We practiced our safety rules like not opening the door for anyone and always staying where Mommy could see them. Detective Crow called 2 days later requesting authorization to subpoena Michael's bank records and pull surveillance footage from 3 different casinos. He explained they were building a fraud case, but warned it would take months to get through the system. I signed every form he sent over within an hour, desperate for some kind of justice even if it came slowly. He mentioned finding evidence of Michael's gambling going back 5 years, way before Dad started sending money. While going through our mail that had piled up, I found 3 notices I didn't recognize. They were from different payday loan companies thanking me for my recent applications. My hands shook as I called the numbers and discovered Michael had used my social security number to borrow $5,000 total. Each company said the loans were taken out online using my information, but from IP addresses I didn't recognize. The rage was so intense I had to sit down before I passed out. I spent